Commander Elias Ward stood on the landing platform of the Aurelian Empire's capital station, staring up at the enormous spire that pierced the sky. The station was unlike anything he had ever seen. It floated among the stars, a mixture of metal and crystal, glowing softly in the darkness of space. Lights moved along the edges like rivers of color, and the structure seemed almost alive. Humans had explored other systems before, but this was something else entirely. He adjusted the strap of his uniform, feeling the weight of the ceremonial insignia that marked him as humanity's chosen representative. The insignia was a symbol of honor, but tonight it felt more like a chain. He had been ordered to marry the Princess Lyra, the daughter of the Aurelian Empire's ruling family. The alliance was crucial for Earth's place in the galaxy, but Elias felt trapped in a plan he had no say in. The ramp of the landing bay hissed as it opened. A group of Aurelian guards approached, their armor shimmering under the station's lights. They were taller than humans, their skin pale and smooth, and their eyes glowed faintly with an inner light. Elias straightened his back, forcing himself to remain calm. He had faced enemies across the stars, negotiated truces with alien species that had teeth and claws, and survived battles that should have ended him, but nothing had prepared him for this. A tall figure stepped forward from the group. She was unlike the others. Her presence was commanding, yet elegant, and there was an intelligence in her gaze that made Elias pause. Her robes were rich in color, flowing and intricate, and they seemed to shift with her movements. She introduced herself as Queen Seraphine, the ruler of the Aurelian Empire. Her voice was calm, but it carried authority that left no room for argument. "Commander Elias Ward," she said, her eyes studying him as if reading every thought.
"We have awaited your arrival."
Elias inclined his head, keeping his voice steady. "Your Majesty, it is an honor to meet you."
Queen Seraphine's gaze did not waver.
"The honor is mutual. You are the first human to hold this position in our empire."
"That is no small matter. Your actions will be remembered."
Elias felt a flicker of pride, quickly followed by unease. The weight of history pressed down on him. He was not a diplomat. He was a soldier, trained to follow orders and make split-second decisions in battle. Now he was expected to navigate politics, culture, and the delicate balance of an entire empire, all while maintaining the appearance of calm. He was led through the station, past corridors lined with glowing panels and alien architecture that seemed to defy gravity. The air smelled faintly of metal and something floral, a scent that was unfamiliar but not unpleasant. Guards accompanied them silently, their eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Elias couldn't help but feel that he was being measured, tested in ways that had nothing to do with combat or survival. Finally, they arrived in a large chamber. The walls were adorned with symbols of the Aurelian Empire, each representing centuries of history, conquests, and alliances. At the center of the room stood Princess Lyra, young and beautiful, with a presence that was both regal and cautious. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her eyes, a deep shade of violet, studied Elias with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Elias bowed slightly. "Princess Lyra, it is an honor to meet you." Lyra's voice was soft but clear.
"Commander Ward, welcome to our home."
"I trust your journey was safe?" "It was," Elias replied. "Thank you." The journey through the outer sectors was eventful, but manageable. Lyra nodded, but her eyes remained thoughtful. There was something in her gaze that suggested she was not just evaluating him as a husband-to-be, but as a person. Elias could feel the weight of her scrutiny, and it made him uneasy. He had faced countless enemies, some of them monstrous, some brilliant. But this, being studied for his thoughts and intentions, was different. Queen Seraphine spoke again.
"The arrangements have been made for your stay. You will dine with us tonight. It is a tradition for new arrivals, especially those involved in important alliances, to be introduced to our customs and history.
Elias nodded. I look forward to learning about your people and traditions, Your Majesty. As they walked to the dining chamber, Elias couldn't help but notice the subtle interactions between the queen and her daughter. Lyra moved with grace, but there was a tension in her posture, a sense that she did not fully agree with the arrangements being made. The queen, however, was composed, serene, and clearly in control. Elias felt a strange pull toward her. Not romantic, not yet, but a recognition that she was extraordinary in a way few beings in the galaxy could match. The dining chamber was vast, with high ceilings and walls of translucent material that allowed the stars outside to shine through. Tables were set with dishes Elias did not recognize, each more elaborate than the last. Servants moved quietly, attending to every detail, and the air was filled with the hum of conversation in multiple languages, none of which he understood. Elias was seated between Lyra and the queen. The meal began with formalities, but soon conversation turned to more personal matters. Lyra asked him about Earth, about human customs, and about his experiences as a soldier. Elias answered honestly, careful to remain polite, but not stiff. Queen Seraphine observed him quietly, her questions subtle and probing. She asked about his leadership style, his views on diplomacy, and how he would handle conflicts that threatened both humanity and the Empire. Elias found himself answering not just with words, but with the careful judgment he had honed over years in command. As the meal progressed, Elias realized that the queen was testing him, but not in the way he expected. She was not seeking weakness. She was seeking understanding of his mind, his character, and his potential. He felt a sense of respect growing for her, alongside the fear that he might be exposed for his ignorance of court politics. After the meal, they moved to a quieter room, overlooking the city below. Lights from the spires and towers created a tapestry of color, shimmering against the darkness of space. Elias found himself speaking more freely here, discussing ideas about alliance, strategy, and the future. Queen Seraphine listened, asked questions, and occasionally challenged him, but never condescended. At one point, she leaned forward slightly, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him pause. You understand the weight of what you are stepping into, Commander. Not just the marriage, but the role you will play in shaping relations between our peoples.
I do, Your Majesty, Elias said, choosing his words carefully. I may be a soldier, but I know the importance of trust, understanding, and careful planning. I will do my best to honor this alliance. She nodded, seemingly satisfied. Very well, but know this. Alliances are fragile. They can be strengthened or broken by a single misstep. You must be vigilant, not just for your own sake, but for humanity's. Elias felt a chill run through him. He had faced life-and-death situations countless times, but this felt different. The stakes were not just personal, they were historical. He was a single human among billions in the Empire. Yet the decisions he made could shape the destiny of worlds. As the evening drew on, Lyra excused herself, leaving Elias alone with the queen. They stood by the window, gazing out at the stars. There was silence for a moment, comfortable yet charged with meaning. You are unlike any human I have met, Queen Seraphine said quietly. Most are impulsive, short-sighted, or driven by emotion. You are deliberate. Careful, but I sense more beneath the surface. Ambition, perhaps, or curiosity.
Elias hesitated. I have learned to survive by observing, by understanding others before acting.
But I am human. I make mistakes. I hope I can prove myself worthy. She smiled, faintly, a gesture that was almost warmth. Perhaps you already have, or perhaps we shall see. For now, rest. Tomorrow, the training and preparations begin. You will learn more about our ways and about yourself than you can imagine. Elias left the room, mind racing. The Queen's words echoed in his thoughts. There was something magnetic about her presence, something that stirred a curiosity he had never felt before. And yet the weight of the arranged marriage to Princess Lyra hung over him, a reminder that his duty and his heart might not align. As he prepared for sleep in the quarters provided by the Empire, he stared at the stars beyond the window. The universe was vast, filled with wonders and dangers alike, and now, he realized, the greatest challenge might not be in surviving the galaxy. It might be in navigating the complex web of human and Aurelian hearts, minds, and politics. And deep down, he knew one thing. No matter what the arrangements said, no matter the traditions, his thoughts would keep returning to the Queen. Not out of desire, not yet, but out of recognition. Recognition of power, intellect, and something he could not name. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of stars, spires, and a future that was uncertain, dangerous, and entirely his own to navigate. The next morning, Commander Elias Ward woke to the soft hum of the Aurelian station. The light from distant stars filtered through the translucent walls, painting the room in shades of blue and silver. His mind was restless, filled with thoughts from the previous evening. The Queen's words had lingered like a shadow over his consciousness, and even as he dressed in the uniform provided, he could not shake the memory of her gaze. It was not the look of a ruler, he realized, but of someone who could see everything and everyone, truly. A soft knock at the door startled him. "Come in," he said, straightening his posture. The door opened to reveal Princess Lyra. She was dressed in a simple tunic, yet even in its modesty she exuded grace. Her hair was tied back, revealing the delicate structure of her face. Her eyes, violet and bright, studied him carefully. "Good morning, Commander," she said. There was no warmth in her tone, but neither was there hostility. She seemed cautious, as though testing him, measuring how he would respond. "Good morning, Princess," Elias replied. "I trust you slept well?" Lyra tilted her head slightly. "I did, though I wonder if you ever truly sleep when you are among strangers and under orders that are not your own." Her words were calm but carried a subtle edge. Elias understood immediately that she was not just speaking about rest, she was speaking about the burden of expectations, something she herself carried. "I suppose that is true," he admitted. "But one must adapt. Sleep is necessary, even if the mind does not always follow." She nodded, then stepped closer. "I hope you understand, Commander, that this marriage is not just a formality. It is a symbol for both our peoples. It is meant to create trust, to solidify alliances. And yet," she hesitated, glancing down for a moment before meeting his gaze again, "it is not something I wanted, and I suspect it is not something you wanted either." Elias looked into her eyes and saw honesty there. He admired her for it, even if the situation was uncomfortable. "You are right. I did not choose this path, but I can honor the alliance without dishonoring either of us. That is my hope." Lyra considered this silently, then nodded again. "Very well. Let us see if your hope matches your actions." She turned and left the room, leaving Elias with a sense of unease he could not fully explain. He followed shortly after, escorted by a guard to the central training hall. Today, he was to begin learning the ways of the Aurelian court, including etiquette, diplomacy, and the martial traditions that were unique to their culture. It was not combat in the human sense, but it was a test of skill, precision, and control. Every movement had meaning, every word a weight he had to measure carefully. The hall was vast, its walls lined with crystalline panels that reflected light in every color imaginable. Instructors moved gracefully, demonstrating techniques that combined elegance with efficiency. Humans were unfamiliar with such movements, but Elias adapted quickly, relying on his training, observation, and discipline. Even here, his mind kept wandering to the Queen. He remembered her words, her questions, and the intensity with which she had challenged him. He could not deny that she had sparked a curiosity he had never felt before. After several hours of training, Elias was granted a brief break. He walked to the balcony that overlooked the city below. The lights of the spires twinkled like stars reflected in water, and he could see alien citizens moving along suspended pathways, their forms graceful and alien. He breathed in the cool, filtered air and tried to focus on the task at hand, but it was difficult. A voice behind him broke his thoughts. "Commander!" He turned to see Queen Seraphine approaching. She moved with a fluid grace, her presence immediately commanding the space around her. Elias straightened, careful not to show surprise. "You work diligently," she said. "But tell me, how do you find our methods? They are different from human ways." Elias replied honestly. "But I see their value: discipline, control, precision. These are traits we respect, though perhaps not in the same form. I am learning quickly."
The Queen's eyes softened just slightly. Good.
"You have the mind of a soldier, yes, but also the mind of a strategist. That is rare among humans." She paused as though considering whether to continue. "Tell me, Commander, when you face decisions that involve both strategy and emotion, how do you balance them?" Elias considered this carefully. "I observe first. I understand the situation fully before acting. I consider the consequences, not just for myself, but for those who depend on me. And I listen, when I can, to those who see what I cannot. I do not act hastily, and I do not act blindly." Her expression unreadable. Then she inclined her head slightly. "You answer wisely. Yet I wonder, will you do the same when the stakes are personal, when the outcome affects hearts as well as nations?" Elias felt a pang of unease. Her words were deliberate, layered. She was testing him, yes, but in a way that reached beyond protocol. "I will do my best, Your Majesty." "I cannot promise perfection, but I can promise sincerity." For a moment, the Queen said nothing. Then she placed a hand on the balcony railing, her gaze fixed on the city below.
Sincerity can be more dangerous than deception. It forces people to see truths they would rather ignore. Be mindful of that, Commander. And remember, strength is not always measured by victory, but by restraint.
He nodded, absorbing her words. They carried weight far beyond mere advice. Elias understood that the Queen had seen centuries of politics, of alliances forged and broken, and she expected him to navigate not just her empire's rules, but the subtle currents of human and Aurelian interaction. Before he could respond, the princess approached. Her expression was guarded but curious. "You speak often with the Queen?" she said, almost accusingly.
Do you admire her? Elias blinked, caught off guard. I respect her greatly, he replied carefully.
"She has wisdom, vision, and understanding. I am learning from her, as I hope to learn from you as well." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "Learning from her is one thing. Being influenced by her is another. Do not forget that your duty, your arrangement with me, is more than protocol. It is personal, too." He met her gaze steadily. "I am aware, Princess, and I will not forget. But respect and understanding do not negate duty. They enhance it. If I can understand the forces around me, perhaps I can fulfill my role more effectively." Lyra considered his words, then nodded. "We shall see," she said quietly, before moving away to continue her own duties. Elias watched her leave, a mix of relief and unease stirring inside him. She was not naive. She understood the tension, and perhaps she even understood him better than he understood himself. The rest of the day passed in a blur of instruction and observation. Elias learned the subtle art of Aurelian diplomacy, practiced ceremonial movements that seemed like dance but were full of meaning, and studied the history of the empire in ways that challenged every assumption he had ever held. Every moment he felt eyes upon him, sometimes the Queen's, sometimes the princess's, and each gaze carried an unspoken test. By evening, Exhaustion weighed on him. Yet when he returned to his quarters, sleep eluded him. He found himself replaying conversations in his mind, analyzing gestures, words, and expressions. There was something unusual about the Queen, something that went beyond authority. She seemed to understand him, not as a human soldier, but as a person. And that understanding stirred emotions he had never expected. There was a soft knock on his door. Before he could answer, it opened, and Lyra entered, carrying a small data tablet. "I thought you might need this," she said, placing it on the table.
It contains information on court protocols and social expectations. Some are subtle, some are overt.
"All are important if you wish to avoid mistakes." Elias looked at her, grateful for her thoughtfulness despite the tension between them. "Thank you, Princess."
I will study it carefully.
She hesitated, then spoke softly.
Elias?
"Do not forget that appearances can be deceiving. Even in this empire, even under the Queen's guidance, there are those who watch for weakness, for hesitation.
You must remain vigilant. And do not let your curiosity blind you." He understood the warning.
Curiosity, he realized, was a double-edged sword. It allowed him to learn, to adapt, to survive. But it could also expose him to danger, particularly when dealing with beings who saw not just actions, but intentions. Lyra left quietly, leaving Elias alone once more. He sat by the window, looking out at the city below. The stars were bright, endless, and humbling. Humanity had ventured far into the galaxy, but here, in this moment, he felt the smallness of his place and the potential for greatness if he navigated the complexities carefully. As he finally drifted into a restless sleep, dreams of stars, alliances, and the weight of expectation filled his mind. He knew that the days ahead would test him in ways he could not yet predict. Not in battle, not in combat, but in diplomacy, in understanding, and in the delicate balance of power between two worlds. And deep within him, a spark of awareness grew. The Queen and the Princess were not just figures of authority. They were forces that could shape the future. And somehow, he felt that his actions, his decisions, and even his heart would become intertwined with theirs in ways that would define not just the alliance, but the fate of two civilizations. The next morning, Commander Elias Ward awoke to the low hum of the station. The vastness of the Aurelian city stretched beyond the windows, towers of crystal and metal reflecting light from the distant stars. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and a sense that every moment here had purpose beyond what he could immediately understand. He dressed quickly, adjusting the ceremonial insignia over his chest. It had become heavier with each passing day. Not in physical weight, but in meaning. He was not just a soldier anymore. He was a symbol, an ambassador, and a test subject in the delicate games of Aurelian power. When he stepped into the training hall, he found Princess Lyra already there, practicing the formal movements he had begun to learn the day before. She moved with a precision that seemed natural, but Elias noticed a tension beneath her grace, a hint of resistance. It was clear she was performing not only for him, but for the watchful eyes of the Empire. "Good morning, Commander," Lyra said without turning, her voice polite yet distant.
"Good morning, Princess,"
Elias replied. He studied her carefully. "Your movements are flawless." Lyra paused for a moment, then glanced at him. "Flawless does not mean easy. Every gesture carries weight, every action meaning. You will see that soon enough."
Elias nodded. He had already begun to understand that the training was not only about skill, but about comprehension, understanding culture, power, and perception.
One misstep could offend not just Lyra, but the Queen, and could ripple outward to the Empire itself. Their instructor, an older Aurelian named Thalor, approached. His voice carried the calm authority of experience. "Today we will focus on diplomacy and practice. Commander Ward, Princess Lyra, you will engage in simulated negotiations."
Treat it as a real scenario. Words can carry more power than any weapon.
Elias prepared himself. He had negotiated truces and trade agreements with alien factions before, but this was different. The simulation was designed to expose subtle weaknesses, test judgment, and push him to balance honesty with tact. Lyra's eyes met his briefly. There was a flicker of challenge in her gaze, a silent question. How far would he go to maintain dignity and authority without overstepping boundaries? Elias met her eyes evenly, refusing to falter. The simulation began. They moved through a mock council room, with holographic representatives from various alien worlds presenting problems, disputes, and requests. Elias listened carefully, interpreting tone, gesture, and language patterns. When he spoke, he did so deliberately, combining human pragmatism with careful respect for alien customs. At first, some holographic delegates challenged him aggressively. One tried to trap him with a complex question about trade rights. Another hinted at human unreliability. Elias remained composed, countering with reasoned logic and subtle observation. He noticed the princess's slight nods of approval when he handled situations diplomatically. Hours passed. By the end of the session, even Thalor seemed impressed.
"You are quick to adapt, Commander,"
he said. Not many humans would survive this test unscathed.
Elias allowed himself a small smile.
I am grateful for the instruction. Every system has rules. Every culture has expectations. I try to learn as quickly as I can.
The Queen's voice, smooth and deliberate, echoed from the observation chamber above. Indeed, Commander Ward, you learn quickly. But remember, knowledge alone is not enough. Understanding others' motives, and sometimes restraining your own instincts, is what makes a leader truly effective. Elias bowed slightly, acknowledging her presence even though she was above him. The Queen's influence was subtle, yet undeniable. He felt her gaze on him even when she was not visible, guiding, testing, and shaping his every move. After the simulation, Lyra approached him privately. You
Handled that well, she said, her tone softer than usual. But you should be aware, the Council observes more than just actions.
They watched reactions, hesitations, and impulses. Humans are unpredictable. That is both a strength and a weakness.
I understand, Elias replied. I will be careful, but I also hope my unpredictability can be a strength.
Lyra studied him silently, as though considering whether to trust him. Then she gave a faint nod. Perhaps it can. But do not let admiration cloud your judgment. Not everyone who smiles upon you is an ally. Elias absorbed her words, realizing the weight behind them.
In the Empire, appearances were as important as truth, and trust was a currency far rarer than wealth or power.
Later in the day, Elias was summoned to the Queen's private chambers. As he entered, he was struck by the calm authority of the space. The room was minimalistic yet elegant, filled with soft light and the faint scent of alien flora. Queen Seraphine sat behind a large desk, her posture perfect, her eyes fixed on him.
Commander Ward, she said, her voice smooth, precise. I hear you are adapting well to our systems.
Your performance and training is commendable. Thank you, Your Majesty, Elias replied. I strive to honor both humanity and your empire. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing.
You have talent, yes.
But I must ask, what is your true intention? Are you here merely to survive the days, or to influence the outcome of events? Elias considered her carefully. He could lie, offer a diplomatic answer, but he knew the Queen would see through it. My intention is to do my duty, he said honestly.
But I will not ignore opportunities to act wisely for the benefit of both our peoples. That is the essence of duty, is it not?
Her lips curved in a faint smile. Perhaps, but remember, Commander, intentions are not always evident to those who do not share them. Some will seek to manipulate you. Others will test you.
You must distinguish between guidance and deception. Elias nodded, understanding the warning.
The Queen was giving him lessons, not just about diplomacy, but survival in a world where power and influence were measured in subtleties. The conversation shifted to the princess. Queen Seraphine's tone softened slightly, though the weight of authority never left her words. Lyra is capable, intelligent, and strong-willed. She will challenge you in ways that may surprise you. Do not mistake defiance for disrespect. She tests you because she must and because she sees potential in you.
Elias felt a mixture of respect and unease.
The Queen's insight was remarkable, almost uncanny. I will remember, Your Majesty. I intend to act with respect and understanding. Always. The Queen nodded once, then turned her gaze to the city outside. Tomorrow you will meet members of the High Council. Their opinions will shape your reputation more than my words or Lyra's. Observe, listen, and choose carefully what you reveal. In the Empire, power is subtle, and words carry weight far beyond what you might imagine. Elias left the chambers with a sense of both honor and caution. The Queen's lessons weighed on him like a mantle, reminding him that his role was more than ceremonial. Every decision, every word, and every gesture mattered. That evening, the city held a gathering of diplomats, nobles, and representatives from distant worlds. The halls were grand, adorned with lights and decorations that shimmered like starlight. Elias followed the princess and the Queen, feeling the presence of history and expectation pressing around him. The High Council members observed him closely, whispering among themselves. Some were friendly, some openly skeptical, and a few watched with barely concealed hostility. Elias realized quickly that the entire room was a stage, and every participant a player in a game of influence and perception. During introductions, a particularly stern delegate questioned Elias about humanity's commitment to the Alliance. "Commander Ward," the alien said, voice edged with doubt, "do humans truly understand the weight of this union? Or is it merely a symbolic gesture?" Elias straightened, drawing upon both training and instinct. "We understand more than symbolism." Humanity has survived countless challenges across many worlds. We are capable of understanding responsibility, of honoring agreements, and of acting with integrity. Our actions will demonstrate our commitment, not just our words. The room fell silent for a moment. Then murmurs of approval and surprise rippled through the attendees. The princess glanced at him, her expression unreadable, while the Queen's eyes reflected a hint of satisfaction. The evening continued with conversations, strategic discussions, and the observation of subtle politics. Elias realized that every smile, every nod, and every gesture was being interpreted. He could not rely on human instincts alone. He needed to understand the alien mind, a culture, and the unspoken rules of influence. Later, as the crowd thinned, the princess approached him once more. "You impressed some tonight," she said softly. "But be cautious. The council is not easily swayed, and there are those who resent a human having even a small role in our affairs." "I understand," Elias replied. "I will be careful. But I cannot ignore opportunities to act with integrity and foresight." Lyra nodded, then paused. "And yet I wonder, Commander, how much of what you do is for duty, and how much is for yourself?" He looked at her, meeting her gaze. "I do not act for myself alone, but I cannot deny that I am human. I am aware of my own thoughts, my own reasoning. And yes, sometimes curiosity, admiration, or even respect guides me. But they will never override my duty." The princess studied him silently, then gave a faint smile. "Perhaps you are wiser than I expected. We shall see how well that wisdom holds in the days to come." That night, Elias returned to his quarters, exhausted but alert. The lessons of the day weighed heavily on him. the Queen's wisdom, the Princess's subtle challenges, and the Council's scrutiny formed a complex web he would need to navigate. He realized that survival in this empire required more than strength. It required perception, restraint, and an understanding of the human mind applied in ways that the alien world could recognize and respect. As he gazed at the stars beyond the window, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Alliance was more than a duty. It was an opportunity for humanity to prove its worth, not as a minor species, but as a force capable of shaping the future of the galaxy. And though his thoughts often returned to the Queen, he knew that every choice he made would ripple outward, affecting not only his fate, but the destiny of two civilizations. Sleep came slowly, but it brought visions of diplomacy, strategy, and the delicate balance of influence. The galaxy was vast, filled with opportunity and danger alike. Elias understood, more than ever, that his challenge was not simply to survive, but to thrive, and to show that a human mind, disciplined, observant, and courageous, could stand among the greatest powers the universe had ever known. The morning sun, or what passed for sunlight on the Aurelian station, filtered through the crystal walls, casting soft golds and purples across the chambers. Commander Elias Ward awoke with a sense of urgency. Today was not a day for lessons or simulations. Today, the High Council would formally review the human role in the Empire, and the political climate would determine not only the future of the Alliance, but the safety and reputation of both Princess Lyra and Elias himself. He dressed carefully, adjusting his ceremonial uniform with deliberate care. Every insignia, every strap, and every fold mattered. Appearances could convey respect or weakness before a single word was spoken. Today, he had to show strength without arrogance, confidence without conceit. The Queen had summoned him early. As he entered her private chambers, he found her seated calmly, reviewing data displays with the precision of a ruler who had seen centuries pass. She looked up as he entered, and Elias felt the same mix of awe and intimidation he had felt the first day he met her. "Commander Ward," Queen Seraphine said, her tone calm, yet filled with authority.
Today will test everything you have learned. Remember that influence is earned through wisdom, restraint, and perception.
Show respect, but do not falter. You may find that the Council values courage as much as politeness. "I understand, Your Majesty," Elias replied. "I will act with care and strength, and I will honor the Alliance in every way I can." The Queen nodded once, then turned back to her displays. Elias left, his mind focused, yet racing. The Council awaited, and the eyes of the entire Empire were watching. When he arrived in the Grand Council chamber, he was immediately struck by the gravity of the moment. The chamber was enormous, circular, with seats rising like terraces around the center. Holographic displays hovered above each member, showing their world, title, and influence. The council members were tall, imposing, and varied in appearance, each representing a different sector of the empire. Some had tentacles, some had multiple eyes, some had skin that shimmered like living metal. Princess Lyra was already present, seated with poise and grace. Her expression was calm, but Elias noticed a flicker of tension in her eyes. The Queen had not yet entered, and the chamber felt colder without her presence. "Commander Ward," said the first council member, his voice sharp and deliberate. "You are a human, an outsider, and yet you are to advise the Empire and influence our politics. Do you understand the weight of this responsibility?" Elias nodded.
I do. I am aware that my presence is unusual, and I do not take it lightly.
My actions will reflect humanity's commitment to this alliance. I intend to act with integrity, wisdom, and respect for your laws and traditions. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some delegates whispered among themselves, clearly impressed, while others looked skeptical, frowning at the boldness of a human speaking with such certainty. Another member spoke, her voice melodic but sharp. "And if your human judgment conflicts with our interests, will you prioritize your species over ours?" Elias met her gaze steadily.
I will prioritize the alliance and the future of both our peoples. Humanity has survived by learning, adapting, and cooperating.
I will do the same here. Our survival and prosperity depend on trust and mutual respect, not conflict or deceit.
The room was silent for a moment. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Elias had learned that clarity and honesty could be more powerful than flattery or grand speeches. He felt a subtle shift in the chamber, a recognition that this human, despite being an outsider, was neither naive nor weak. At that moment, Queen Seraphine entered. Her presence immediately filled the room with authority. Conversations hushed, and every eye turned to her. She moved to her seat at the center, regal and composed, observing Elias with a faint smile.
Members of the council, she said, her voice carrying effortlessly across the chamber, Commander Ward has demonstrated the qualities we value: intelligence, integrity, and respect. Let us judge his actions fairly, not his origins.
The strength of our alliance depends on cooperation, not prejudice. A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the council. Some members nodded, others exchanged cautious glances, but the Queen's words had set a tone they could not ignore. The council continued with discussions, proposals, and debates. Elias observed carefully, noting alliances, rivalries, and unspoken motives. When asked questions, he answered with honesty and careful reasoning, never overstepping, yet never underestimating the intelligence of the delegates. Princess Lyra watched him closely. Elias could see her thoughts in her eyes, a mixture of caution, curiosity, and perhaps admiration. She had challenged him before, tested him, and now she was evaluating the results. Elias respected her intellect, but he also felt a subtle bond forming through shared understanding and purpose. By midday, the council had reached a critical juncture. A proposal was made that would have limited the human role in the Empire, restricting access to information and influence. Elias knew that compliance would be easy, but ineffective. Silence would be interpreted as weakness. He stood, drawing all eyes to him. "Members of the council," he began, voice steady and firm. "I understand the concerns about my presence and influence, but I ask you to consider this. The strength of an alliance does not come from restriction, but from cooperation. Humanity offers perspective, experience, and insight that can benefit the Empire. To ignore that is to ignore potential. To limit access based on fear is to weaken us all." A few delegates murmured disapproval, but Elias continued without faltering. "I do not seek power for myself. I seek understanding, collaboration, and success for both our peoples. Trust must be earned, but it must also be extended. Let us judge actions, not assumptions." The chamber was silent. Then, one by one, delegates began to nod. Some voices rose in cautious support, acknowledging his words. The tide had turned. Queen Seraphine's eyes shone with a faint pride. She had known the council would test him, and he had risen to meet the challenge. After hours of discussion, the council reached a decision. They would allow the human presence to continue, with full participation in advisory roles. It was a historic moment, the first time a human had been granted such authority in the Empire. Applause filled the chamber, some genuine, some cautious, but all acknowledging Elias's success. After the session, Elias found a quiet moment with the princess.
You handled yourself well today, Lyra said, her tone softer than usual.
Not all would have the courage or clarity to speak so openly before the council.
"I could not have done it without what I've learned from you and the Queen," Elias replied. "Your guidance, even if indirect, shaped my approach.
And the Queen's insight, well, it is unmatched." Lyra smiled faintly. "Do not let flattery cloud your judgment, Commander, but perhaps you are learning more than expected." She paused, then added quietly, "The future is uncertain, but your role has changed. Be mindful and be careful." Elias nodded, feeling both relief and awareness of the path ahead. The council had recognized his value, but the complexities of the empire were far from resolved. Allies and rivals alike would continue to watch, and the delicate balance of power required constant attention.
That evening, he was summoned to the Queen's chambers once more. She was seated calmly, reviewing data, but her eyes brightened as he entered.
"You have performed admirably," she said. "The Council's decision reflects your clarity, your wisdom, and your integrity."
But remember, influence is fluid. Today's victories do not guarantee tomorrow's success. The Empire watches, and even well-intentioned actions can be misinterpreted.
I understand, Your Majesty, Elias said.
I will remain vigilant, and I will act with honor. The Queen's gaze softened slightly. You have proven that humans can rise above assumptions and expectations. That is rare. And that is why.
Your presence here matters, not only to Lyra or to me, but to the future of the Alliance.
For a moment, silence passed. Then she leaned forward, her voice softer, almost intimate. Elias Ward, you have changed the way I see not only humans but the possibilities of our empire. That is no small accomplishment. He felt a surge of respect and admiration for her. Your Majesty, it is not I alone. I am guided by your insight, Princess Lyra's wisdom, and the responsibility of my own people. Together, we can build something far greater than protocol or tradition. The Queen nodded, a faint smile forming. Indeed. And perhaps the future will remember this moment, not for the titles or ranks, but for courage, understanding, and the ability to act wisely when it matters most. As he left the chambers that night, Elias felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had experienced in battle. He had faced scrutiny, challenge, and the unknown, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and respected. Humanity's place in the Empire was no longer symbolic. It was real, recognized, and valued. In the quiet of his quarters, he reflected on the journey. The Queen's guidance, the princess's intelligence, and his own resolve had shaped the past days into a turning point. The galaxy was vast, full of uncertainty and danger, but Elias knew this. Humans were not pawns, not outsiders. They were partners, capable of understanding, influencing, and thriving even among the most advanced civilizations. He closed his eyes, thinking of the stars beyond the station. The Alliance was secure, but the path ahead remained full of challenges. Yet, he was ready. For the first time, he understood the full meaning of duty, courage, and the subtle power of human intellect. And somewhere deep within, he knew that his thoughts of the Queen, of the princess, and of the Empire itself would continue to shape his choices, guiding him through the trials, triumphs, and transformations yet to come. The future was uncertain, vast, and dazzling. But for Commander Elias Ward, humanity had proven itself capable of rising to meet it, and perhaps of shaping it in ways that no one had expected.